Hi everyone. Before I start this video, make sure that you're a part of my Discord server by joining the link in the description box below. And in this video, we'll be going over A-Level Accounting 2024 May-June Paper 2-1 question number 4. This is paper 2, which consists of 4 questions. 2 of them will be of 30 marks and 2 of them will be of 15 marks. And the total time limit for this paper is 1 hour and 45 minutes. Since question number 4 is of 30 marks, ideally you should be spending about 35 minutes in order to solve this question. And in this video as well, we'll be attempting to solve it under 35 minutes. So without any further delay, let's get started. K Limited is a manufacturing company which has recently changed from using absorption costing to using marginal costing. For the first part, we need to explain 2 reasons why a manufacturing company might change from using absorption costing to using marginal costing. The very first reason to use marginal costing over absorption costing is that it is useful for short-term decision making because it is based on contribution. Let's write it down. Marginal costing is useful for short-term decision making as it is based on contribution. The second reason to use marginal costing over absorption costing is that it will avoid any problems regarding overabsorption or underabsorption of overheads because we do not use any overhead absorption rates under marginal costing. Let's write it down. Marginal costing avoids problems of overabsorption or underabsorption of overheads as overhead absorption rates are not used. That is all for the first part. Let's move towards the next one. We have been given some additional information. At one of K Limited's factories, a single type of product is manufactured. This month's marginal cost statement is as follows. So we have been given the total sales revenue, the variable cost, which is also the total variable cost. We have the total contribution, total fixed cost, and the total profit. For the second part, we need to calculate the contribution to sales ratio. So the formula is pretty simple. It is just going to be the total contribution divided by the total sales revenue multiplied by 100. So we can just substitute the values. The contribution is 198,000. We have our total sales revenue to be 660,000 times 100. This gives the contribution to sales ratio to have the value of 30%. That is all for the second part. Now for the third part, we need to calculate the break-even point in sales revenue. So remember that normally if you have to calculate the break-even point in units, our formula would be fixed cost divided by the contribution per unit. But since it's asking us to calculate the break-even point in sales revenue, the formula is just going to be break-even point in units times the selling price per unit. Now if you substitute it, that will be fixed cost divided by the contribution per unit times the selling price per unit. And this is times selling price per unit divided by 1, right? So we can just rewrite it as fixed cost divided by the contribution per unit divided by the selling price per unit. And this part is just contribution to sales ratio, right? Because the per unit can get cancelled out and it's still going to give the same value of 30%. So you can just use this formula instead. So the break-even point in sales revenue is just going to be our fixed costs divided by the contribution to sales ratio. Alright, let's substitute the values. That will be 95,000 for our fixed costs, and we just calculated our contribution to sales ratio to be 30%. And this will give the value of 316,666.67. We can just round it up as 316,667. That is all for the third part. Let's move towards the next one. Now the directors require a target profit of 140,000 to be made next month. We need to calculate the sales revenue required to achieve the target profit. Alright, so just remember our general formula to get the profit is the number of units times the contribution per unit minus any fixed costs will be equal to the profit. So let us first derive the formula to get the number of units when we have been given the target profit. So that is just going to be the target profit. We bring this fixed cost to the other side, so that will be plus fixed costs. And we bring the contribution per unit to the other side, which will go as the denominator. But in this case, rather than asking us the number of units, we have been asked the sales revenue. Sales revenue is just going to be the number of units times the selling price per unit. Right? So we need to calculate that part. So our required sales revenue is just going to be the number of units. So we'll substitute this formula instead. That will be profit plus fixed costs divided by the contribution per unit times the selling price per unit. Again, we can rewrite it as the profit plus fixed cost divided by contribution per unit divided by the selling price per unit, which means that it is just going to be profit plus the fixed cost divided by our contribution to sales ratio. So the sales revenue required is just going to be our target profit, which is given to be 140,000, plus our fixed cost, which was given above to be 95,000, and we calculated the contribution to sales ratio as 30%. So this will result in the required sales revenue to have the value of 783,333.33. So we can just round it up as 783,334. That is all for the fourth part. Let's move towards the next one. We have been given additional information. The directors are prepared to accept a special order with a negative contribution. Now we need to say 3 reasons why a special order with a negative contribution might be accepted. The very first reason why we will accept any order with a negative contribution is to raise brand awareness, so that more people will get to know about our product and our brand, and in the long run that will increase the sales revenue along with the profit. Let's write it down: to raise brand awareness. The second reason is to promote a new product, because since this is a special order, it might be the case that the product will also be a unique product, and if we accept it even with a negative contribution, it means that we will be able to promote a new product. So to promote a new product. And the third reason could be to dispose of discontinued inventory. Some inventory which might not be used for our regular products might be used for this special order, and that will give us an opportunity to dispose of such discontinued inventory. Let's write it down: to dispose of discontinued inventory. That is all for the fifth part. Let's move towards the next one. We have been given additional information. At another factory of KL Limited, 3 different types of product are made. The following details are available. So we have product A, B, and C, and we have been given the selling price per unit, maximum monthly demand per product, materials used per unit, and the labor cost per unit. Materials cost 1.5 per kg. Only 35,000 kg of material are forecast to be available in January 2025. Okay, forecast fixed costs are 63,000 per month. We need to calculate the optimum profit to be made in January 2025. Okay, so in this case we have shortage of material. The first thing we need to do is calculate the actual material required in order to meet the maximum monthly demand per each product. So let's do that. We have product A, B, and C. Let us calculate the materials required for the monthly demand. So we already know the number of units for each of the product, and we also know the materials required for each unit. So we can multiply these two together and get the total materials required for the monthly demand. For product A, that will be 2400 times 6, which results in 14,400. For product B, that will be 3200 times 8, which results in 25,600. And for product C, that will be 1800 times 4, which results in 7,200. The next thing we can do is calculate the material cost per unit, because we have the material cost per kg right here and the materials used per unit is right here. So let's calculate the materials cost per unit. For product A, that will be 6 kg times the rate of 1.5, which results in 9. For B, that will be 8 kg times 1.5, which results in the value of 12. And for product C, that will be 4 kg times the rate of 1.5, which results in the value of 6. Now we can easily calculate the contribution per unit. That is just going to be selling price minus the variable cost, and in this case the variable cost is the labor cost and material cost. So for product A, the contribution per unit will be 35 minus 12 minus 9, which will result in the value of 14. For product B, that will be 43 minus 14 minus 12, which results in the value of 17. And for product C, that will be 28 minus 10 minus 6, which results in the value of 12. In this case, we have a shortage of material. So whenever there is shortage and we need to allocate the shortage factor, we always need to calculate the contribution per the shortage factor. So in this case, we will calculate the contribution per kg of the materials. So we already have the contribution per unit right here. We just need to divide it by the materials used per unit. So for product A, that will be 14 divided by 6, which results in the value of 2.33. For product B, that will be 17 divided by 8, which results in the value of 2.13. And for product C, that will be 12 divided by 4, which results in the value of 3. Now we need to rank the products. The highest contribution per the shortage factor will always be ranked first. So in this case, product C will be ranked first, product A will be ranked second, and product B will be ranked third. Now let us allocate the materials. We know that we have a total of 35,000 kg of material. Firstly, we will divide the material to product C. We'll always divide the material or allocate the material based on their ranks. And since C has the highest rank, we will first allocate it to C. C requires a total of 7,200 material and we have 35,000. So out of 35,000, 7,200 will be allocated to C. Now, after this allocation, we have 35,000 minus 7,200 material left, which is 27,800. Now the second rank is for product A, which requires a total of 14,400 direct materials. So we will allocate the 14,400 for A. Then the remaining material will be 27,800 minus 14,400, which results in 13,400. And the last ranking product is product B, which requires a total of 25,600 material. But since only 13,400 is available, we can only allocate this amount of material to product B. Now let us calculate the new number of units. For product C and A, we allocated the required number of materials, so the number of units will not change. So that will still be 1800 units and 2400 units. So 1800 units and 2400 units. But for product B, we need to calculate the new number of units. We know that each unit requires 8 kg and we have a total of 13,400 kg. So we can just utilize the unitary method. 8 kg can make 1 unit. It means that 1 kg will be able to produce 1 by 8 unit. And we have a total of 13,400 kg, which we allocated right here. So based on 13,400 kg, we will be able to produce 13,400 by 8 units, which will be equal to 1,675 units. Okay. Now in this question, we need to calculate the optimum profit to be made. So we can start with the total contribution now. So the total contribution for A, we know that we'll be making 2,400 units and the contribution per unit is 14. Similarly, for product B, we will be making 1,675 units and we have a contribution per unit of 17. And for product C, we will be making 1,800 units where the contribution per unit is 12. This results in the total contribution to be 83,675. Then we need to subtract the fixed cost. We were given the fixed cost above, which is 63,000 per month. So we subtract the 63,000 here and this will give us the optimum profit, which will be 83,675 minus 63,000, which is 20,675. That is all for the sixth part. Let's move towards the next one. We have been given additional information. A director has found an overseas supplier of materials who is prepared to make up the shortfall in materials. The supplier will charge 2.6 per kg and there will be a delivery charge of 8,000. We need to calculate the additional profit to be made if the shortfall in materials is made up by the overseas supplier. In this case, we're only concerned with the additional profit. So the first thing we can calculate is the additional units of B that can be prepared now. Previously, we used to produce 3,200 units and due to the shortage, we only made 1,675 units. So in this case, the additional unit is just going to be 3,200 minus 1,675, which results in 1,525 units. Now let us calculate the new contribution per unit for these additional units. We can start with the selling price. That is 43. Then we have our new material price, 2.6 per kg. And we know that each unit requires 8 kg for product B. So that is just going to be 2.6 times 8. Then we need to subtract the labor cost as well. The labor cost is 14 per unit. Let's subtract it. This will result in the new contribution per unit to be 8.2. Now we also have an additional delivery charge of 8,000. Let us calculate the additional profit. So the additional profit in this case is just going to be the total contribution. So for the additional profit, we will start with the total contribution, which is our additional number of units, 1525, times the new contribution per unit of 8.2. This will give us the new additional contribution, after which we need to subtract the additional fixed cost of 8,000. This will give us the additional profit of 4,505. That is all for the seventh part. Let's move towards the next one. We now need to advise the directors whether or not they should purchase the shortfall in materials from the overseas supplier. We need to justify our answer considering both advantages and disadvantages. Alright, this is of 7 marks, so 1 mark will be reserved for the decision. It means that we will have to write down 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages. Let's write down the advantages. The very first advantage is that if we purchase the shortfall in materials from the overseas supplier, we will be gaining more profit. So gain more profit. The second advantage is that if we produce the regular number of units, because if we do not purchase the shortfall in materials, we will only be able to produce 1675 units out of 3200 units. But if we purchase the shortfall in materials from the overseas supplier, we will be able to produce the regular number of units for product B as well. It means that there will be no loss of regular customers. Let's write it down. No loss of regular customers. Then the third advantage is that it will retain the workforce as well, because if we only had to produce 1675 units, maybe some of the workers would have been redundant. But if we purchase the shortfall in materials, we will be producing the regular number of units, which means that we will be able to retain the workforce. So retains workforce. Those are our advantages. Now we will move on to the disadvantages. The very first thing we can question is, since we are considering a new supplier, we can always question their reliability. So is the overseas supplier reliable? Then the second disadvantage is that we can question the quality of the materials as well. So will the quality of materials be maintained? Then the third disadvantage is that since we are considering an overseas supplier, there is always the risk of delay in delivery. So risk of delay in delivery due to the supplier being overseas. Now, based on these factors, we need to make a final decision. Personally, in this case, I would advise the directors not to purchase the shortfall in materials from the overseas suppliers, because there can be currency fluctuations which could increase the prices. That means we might have to bear additional loss as well. Let's write it down. The directors should not purchase the shortfall in materials from the overseas suppliers as there could be currency fluctuations which could increase prices. And that way the company would have to suffer a loss. Alright, that is all for the 8th part as well as this entire question. If you found this video useful, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment below. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you do not miss any of these videos in the future. Thank you.